It's strange, isn't it? How someone can take up so much space in your mind without even being there anymore. You wake up, and before you even open your eyes, they appear. A face, a name, a memory that clings like smoke after a fire. You tell yourself it's nothing, that it'll fade, that time will eventually do what it always does. But it doesn't. Days turn into months, and still they linger. Like an echo you can't stop hearing no matter how far you walk away from the sound. You start wondering what's wrong with you. Why can't you let it go? Why does a single person still hold such power over your thoughts when your life has moved on? Maybe you've even tried to replace them, distract yourself, bury them under work or noise or new people. But they slip through the cracks, finding you in quiet moments when your guard is down. It's as if your mind itself is conspiring against you. But what if, and just hear me out, what if this isn't about them at all? What if they're just a mirror reflecting back something inside you that you've been avoiding? I used to think memories were random, like uninvited guests showing up in your head without reason. But the older I get, the more I realize nothing in the mind is random. The people who stay with us, even in absence, stay because they represent something unresolved, something unfinished. They hold up a mirror to parts of us we don't fully understand yet. Think about it. There are people who've been closer to you, who've shared more of your life, and yet they faded easily. But this one lingers. Maybe because they touched a part of you that no one else could reach. Maybe because they awakened something you didn't know was there. Sometimes the ones we can't forget aren't meant to be remembered for who they are, but for what they showed us about ourselves. I know how much it hurts. This loop of thoughts that won't stop. It's exhausting. You start to feel trapped, like your own mind has turned into a maze with no way out. You tell yourself, I just want peace, but the more you fight it, the louder it gets. There's this strange paradox. The harder you try to forget, the more tightly the thought clings to you. It's like trying not to think about something only guarantees that you will. I think Carl Jung was right, that the mind doesn't torment us without purpose. When a person keeps returning to your thoughts, it's like your psyche tapping you on the shoulder, saying, there's something here you haven't faced yet. That haunting presence isn't punishment, it's an invitation. Maybe they represent the love you never gave yourself. Maybe the rejection you felt from them mirrors a deeper fear of not being enough. Or maybe they embody the life you longed for but didn't allow yourself to live. It's never just about them. It's about you and what part of your soul they awakened, for better or worse. I think that's why it hurts so much. Because deep down, what we're mourning isn't just the loss of someone. It's the loss of a version of ourselves we touched when they were near, the side of us that felt alive, open, seen. When they left, it wasn't only them that disappeared. It was a part of us that we didn't know how to keep alive without them. And maybe your mind keeps bringing them back because that part of you is still asking to be found again. I know how tempting it is to wish the thoughts away, to erase every trace, every memory, every scent that brings them back. But maybe the way out isn't erasure. Maybe it's understanding. What if the only way to stop being haunted by someone is to finally listen to what that haunting is trying to say? Maybe that presence, as unbearable as it feels, is here to lead you back to something essential, something within you that's been asking to be seen all along. You see, the mind has this strange kind of mercy. It won't stop repeating the lesson until we truly learn it. You can ignore it, distract yourself, numb it, but it will circle back, disguised in different faces, different stories, until you finally turn around and face it. So maybe the real question isn't, why can't I stop thinking about them? Maybe the real question is, what part of me still wants to be known through them? Because when you find that answer, When you finally look at what your mind has been trying to show you, something shifts. The obsession begins to dissolve. The person doesn't vanish overnight, but their image starts to lose its power. The weight in your chest begins to lift, not because they're gone, but because you've reclaimed what they represented. I know this isn't easy. It's vulnerable work. To turn inward, to see yourself not as a victim of memory, but as its meaning. But I promise you this, when you start to see that the person in your mind is just a doorway, everything changes. They stop being a ghost and become a guide. And when that happens, when you finally stop fighting and start understanding, you realize something almost sacred. The answer was never in them. It was always in you. You know that feeling when a memory suddenly hits you in the middle of an ordinary day. You're driving, scrolling your phone, or folding laundry, and suddenly their face flashes in your mind like a lightning strike. For a moment, you're not here anymore. You're back somewhere else. In that conversation, that moment, that feeling, and it's so vivid it almost feels unfair, like your own mind is betraying you. But here's what I've come to realize. The unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symbols, in images, in emotions that won't leave you alone. When someone keeps showing up in your thoughts, it's not your brain being cruel. It's your deeper self trying to tell you something in the only language it knows. You see, the unconscious doesn't care about logic. It doesn't think, this relationship ended, so I should move on. It only knows emotional truth, and if something remains unresolved, it'll keep rising up, disguised as that person, the one who won't leave your head. Jung said that the unconscious finds ways to reveal itself, even when we try to silence it. And what better way than through the people who once touched our hearts? It's strange, isn't it, how certain people seem to embody entire emotions. They become a symbol of love or loss or freedom or even shame. Sometimes they represent the part of us that's still hidden. Maybe that's why you can't stop thinking about them, because they've become the living metaphor for a truth you haven't faced. We all carry shadows, memories we've repressed, desires we've denied, pain we've refused to feel, but the psyche has a way of pushing them to the surface, and it doesn't always do it gently. It uses the people who stir us most deeply as mirrors, showing us what we've buried. That's why you can forget countless faces, but not this one. They're tied to something sacred and unresolved inside you. I remember reading about this idea, and that projection is the mind's way of showing us who we are before we're ready to see it directly. We project our wounds, our hopes, our unlived selves onto others. We say, they made me feel alive, when in truth, they only illuminated the parts of us that were already waiting to be awakened. It's not that they created the feeling, they just triggered what was dormant within you, and that's what makes it so confusing, because it feels like it's about them. It feels like if they came back, everything would make sense again. But it's never about the person. It's about what your soul recognized in their reflection. The mind obsesses not over them, but over the message they carried, a message you still haven't fully decoded. It's like your unconscious is whispering, don't look at them. Look at what they represent. Maybe they symbolize the courage you never let yourself express, or the tenderness you stopped showing after being hurt. Or perhaps they embody a kind of freedom you've always longed for but never allowed yourself to live. When we don't integrate those parts consciously, the psyche finds someone to project them onto, and that's when the obsession begins. But here's where it gets beautiful. This isn't a curse, it's communication. Your unconscious is calling you back to wholeness. It's saying, this person holds a piece of you, go and retrieve it. Once you start seeing it that way, everything changes. You stop asking, why can't I stop thinking about them? And start asking, what is this connection trying to teach me about myself? That one question shifts everything from torment to transformation. It's not about figuring them out. It's about listening to what your emotions are saying. The anger, the longing, the sadness, they're not enemies, they're messages, they're parts of you, waving their hands, asking to be seen. The moment you start listening instead of resisting, you begin to reclaim your power. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point of all this. Not to erase the memory, but to understand why it matters. Because the moment you do, it loses its grip. The person becomes less of a ghost and more of a symbol, one that helped guide you back to yourself. So the next time that memory appears out of nowhere, when that face floods your mind and you feel the old ache rising, take a breath. Don't push it away. Don't curse it for showing up. Instead, quietly ask yourself, what are you trying to show me? And then listen, because the truth isn't in the memory itself. It's hidden in what it awakens within you. There's something almost mystical about how we fall for people, isn't there? Sometimes it feels like fate, as if the universe wove this connection with invisible threads and dropped it right into your path. But what if, instead of fate, it's something happening within you? What if the person you can't stop thinking about isn't your missing half, but the reflection of something inside you that's been waiting to be recognized? Jung talked about this, the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies that live within each of us. Every man carries a hidden feminine essence, and every woman a hidden masculine one. And the people who shake us to our core, the ones who light up something inexplicable in us, they often awaken that buried side. It's like the psyche sees in another person the very qualities it's been longing to reclaim. Maybe that's why some connections feel magnetic, even irrational. You're drawn not just to them, but to what they represent, a part of your own soul calling out to you. It's not about romance or destiny or the one. It's about wholeness. The person becomes a mirror for the missing balance within you. Think about it. Have you ever been fascinated by someone's strength because deep down you wish you could be that strong? Or maybe you admired someone's softness, their ease with emotion, because it mirrored something you've learned to suppress. The attraction feels like love, but what you're really falling for is your own unlived potential. That's the beauty and the heartbreak of projection. You see your own light in someone else's face. You hand them a piece of your soul and forget it was yours to begin with. And then, when they leave, you feel shattered, not because they took something from you, but because they reminded you of what you had lost within yourself. It's a painful illusion, this idea that someone else completes us, but it's also a necessary one, at least until we wake up to it. The ones who haunt us most deeply are often the ones who hold up the clearest mirrors. They show us what we long for, what we fear, and what we've forgotten we can become. When I think back on the people I couldn't forget, I see it now. I wasn't obsessed with them. I was obsessed with the parts of me they brought to life. The feeling of being understood, inspired, alive. That was me too. It was my capacity for love, my depth, my fire. I just didn't know it yet. They showed it to me like a spark in the dark, and for a while I mistook the spark for them. It's almost funny, isn't it? How love, or even infatuation, can be the most profound form of self-discovery in disguise. Every connection is a reflection. Every person who stirs something in you is a messenger, carrying an invitation to look inward. They say without words, this part of you is waiting. And yet we resist it. We chase the person instead of the message. We cling to the fantasy, not realizing that what we truly crave isn't their love. It's our own forgotten wholeness. We think we're trying to get them back, but really, we're trying to return to ourselves. But when you finally see it, when the illusion cracks and you recognize your reflection in the other, everything softens. You no longer need to possess them. You no longer need to replay the memories or question what went wrong, because you understand they were never meant to stay. They came to show you the part of yourself you'd been missing. Maybe that's the real meaning of soulmates. Not someone who fills your emptiness, but someone who reminds you that you were never empty to begin with. They help you remember what you already are. So when that person appears in your mind again, instead of wishing them away, thank them silently. Not because of what they gave you, but because of what they awakened in you. Because now you know that the love, the power, the tenderness you saw in them, those were always yours. And when you reclaim them, the need to hold on to anyone fades. You stop searching for completion in another because you found it where it always was, within you. There's a certain moment, quiet but unmistakable, when you realize that the person who lives in your thoughts isn't really them anymore. It's the version of them your mind built. An image stitched together from longing, pain, and all the unspoken things you wish had gone differently. And in that realization, something inside you shifts. You begin to see that maybe all this time you weren't haunted by another person at all. You were haunted by your own shadow. The shadow, that word sounds so dark, doesn't it? Like something sinister, something to fear. But Jung didn't see it that way. He saw it as the side of ourselves we refuse to look at, the impulses, the feelings, the truths we've labeled unacceptable. And yet, the more we repress them, the more power they gain. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It waits. It watches. It speaks in dreams, in slips of emotion, in people who trigger us so deeply we can barely breathe. Maybe that's what this person represents. Not unfinished love, not destiny, but the face of something inside you that you've been avoiding. They carry your disowned feelings like a secret messenger. When they appear in your thoughts, what they're really doing is saying, "Look here, this is the part of you you've been hiding from." Think about how strong the reaction is. The irritation, the fascination, the pain. That kind of intensity doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. It's your unconscious pressing on an old bruise. That's why it feels personal, why it's so hard to rationalize away. You can't reason with your shadow. You have to meet it. It's almost ironic how the people we can't stand or can't forget are the ones who reveal us to ourselves, the ones who make us feel out of control, angry, jealous, unworthy, obsessed. They're mirrors for the emotions we've buried the deepest. The things we judge in others often point straight to the parts of ourselves we haven't accepted. The moment you realize that, even your pain starts to make sense. Every trigger becomes a teacher. There's a psychological study I once read that said we remember people most intensely when they evoke a strong emotional reaction, positive or negative. Our brains tag those encounters as significant, as if saying, "Don't forget this, it matters." But the mind doesn't distinguish between the emotion's source and its meaning. It only remembers the energy. And when that energy is tied to something unresolved, it loops again and again until we learn what it's trying to tell us. That's what I think happens with these unforgettable people. They stir something in us that's older than the relationship itself. An ancient wound, a forgotten fear, a version of ourselves that once needed to be seen but wasn't. So the psyche resurrects them, hoping this time you'll pay attention. And maybe that's why the thought of them feels so heavy, because when you look close enough, you realize it's not about the person at all. It's about you. The anger is your anger. The fear is your fear. The longing is your own hunger to be whole. They just played the role of the messenger. It's easy to say, just move on, but it's impossible to move on from something you don't understand. The only way out is through. You have to turn toward the shadow and ask, what are you showing me? Sometimes it's self-worth, sometimes it's control, sometimes it's the realization that you've been chasing people who repeat an old story you haven't rewritten yet. That's how the shadow works. It recreates the same emotional patterns until you finally decide to see them consciously. It's not punishment, it's evolution. The same lessons, wrapped in new faces until awareness breaks the cycle. And maybe that's the beauty hidden in all this pain. The person who won't leave your mind is not your curse. They're your catalyst. They've brought your buried self to the surface. They've forced you to look at what you've been running from. And even though it hurts, there's something sacred about that, because that confrontation, that moment when you see your shadow clearly, is the first real step toward freedom. So the next time their image surfaces and your heart tightens, don't ask how to forget. Ask what part of you is finally asking to be remembered. Because what if this isn't about losing someone, but about finding the rest of yourself? And when that thought finally settles in, when you stop running from the shadow and start walking beside it, you begin to realize something profound. The person who haunted you was never your enemy. They were your reflection leading you home. There are moments when all of this starts to feel too big to be just about you and one person, as if something deeper, older, and almost ancient is moving through it, like you're caught in a pattern that didn't begin with you, but somehow chose you to become conscious of it. Jung called it the collective unconscious, the vast reservoir of shared memories, archetypes, and emotional patterns that humanity carries. And maybe, just maybe, that's what's been happening all along. You know how sometimes you meet someone and it feels like you've known them before, even if you've just exchanged a few words? Or how a connection can feel strangely familiar, as if your souls recognized each other before your minds even had time to think. We call it chemistry or soul connection or destiny. But what if it's simply the unconscious recognizing an archetype, an old, universal story being replayed through two human lives? It could be the pattern of the unattainable beloved, the teacher, the savior, the betrayer, the muse. These stories live in all of us. They've existed since the beginning of time, shaping myths, art, love, and loss. So when someone enters your life and evokes something you can't explain, it might not be about personal history. It might be your psyche encountering one of these timeless patterns, saying, "This is the lesson you're here to live." And that realization changes everything. It takes you from being a victim of your emotions to being a participant in something much larger. Suddenly, your pain feels sacred, not senseless. The heartbreak becomes initiation. The obsession becomes a symbol. I think that's why certain people feel unforgettable, because they activate something archetypal. They touch the place where your personal story merges with humanity's story. Maybe that's why love can feel so cosmic, so infinite, even when it exists entirely in your own mind. You're not just feeling for one person. You're feeling the full depth of what it means to be human, to long, to hope, to lose. But here's the thing. Just because a connection feels destined doesn't mean it's meant to last. Some souls don't come to stay. They come to awaken. They stir something that was asleep in you. A courage, a capacity for love, a depth of feeling you didn't know you had. And once that part of you awakens, their role is complete. But we rarely recognize that in time. We mistake the awakening for attachment. I've learned that the real work begins when you stop chasing the person and start following what they awakened. When you stop asking, "Why them?" and start asking, "Why now? Why did this pattern choose me in this moment to become conscious? What does my soul want me to see?" Maybe that's the purpose of the collective unconscious. It uses relationships as mirrors to show us what humanity still hasn't learned about love, fear, forgiveness, and truth. Each of us lives out fragments of that vast story, and through our awareness, we add a new chapter, one where the old patterns finally evolve. So instead of asking, "Why can't I forget this person?" Maybe the better question is what story am I completing through them? What archetype am I rewriting? Maybe this isn't punishment, maybe it's a sacred task to turn something ancient into something conscious, to bring light to the dark places where love and pain have always lived. It's strange, isn't it, how even pain can feel meaningful when you start to see it that way. You stop resenting the person and instead you begin to thank them, not because they were perfect or kind or right for you, but because they helped you touch something eternal. They became the doorway through which your soul remembered its depth. And when that awareness settles in, something inside you softens. You stop holding on so tightly. You stop needing to explain it or justify it, because you realize this wasn't just about you and them. This was about life itself trying to wake you up. And maybe that's the most humbling truth of all. The people who mark us most deeply are not accidents. They are archetypes, messengers, teachers from the depths of our shared humanity. They remind us of what still sleeps inside us and what we're finally ready to set free. At some point, the storm of questions begins to quiet. You stop asking why and start listening instead. There's a strange peace that comes when you realize you don't need to erase the person or the memory. You just need to understand what it was trying to teach you. That's when the real transformation begins. Awareness changes everything. It's like turning on a light in a room you've been stumbling through for years. The same objects are there, the same memories, the same feelings, but now you can finally see where they belong. And once you see clearly, the fear starts to dissolve. I think this is where healing truly begins. Not when you finally forget someone, but when you stop fighting your thoughts about them. The first step is acceptance, radical acceptance. Letting the memories come without judgment, without resistance. Because what you resist doesn't go away, it grows stronger. But what you allow begins to lose its grip. You don't have to approve of what happened. You don't even have to feel okay about it. Acceptance just means saying, this is part of my story. The moment you do, your energy shifts. You're no longer running from your pain. You're integrating it. And integration is how freedom begins. The second step is meaning. You start to ask different questions. Not, why did they do this? Or, why can't I move on? But, what did this experience awaken in me? Maybe it revealed a wound you didn't know still hurt. Maybe it showed you how deeply you can love. Maybe it taught you where your boundaries are, or how easily you abandon yourself for connection. Whatever the lesson, when you start seeing it that way, the pain transforms into wisdom. And the third step, maybe the hardest, is shifting your focus. All this time, your energy has been flowing outward, feeding the memory, the longing, the questions. But what if you turned that same energy back toward yourself? What if you used it to create, to rebuild, to grow? Because every thought you've given to that person, every ounce of emotion you've poured into them, it all belongs to you. It was always your life force, your love, your fire. You can take it back. It's not an instant process. Some days you'll feel strong, others you'll stumble back into the old ache. But slowly, gently, the energy changes. The memories lose their sharpness. The longing turns into gratitude. And the more you focus on your own evolution, your projects, your dreams, your self-discovery, the more space you create inside for something new to grow. There's a kind of alchemy in this. The same energy that once kept you stuck becomes the force that moves you forward. You realize you don't need to suppress anything. You just need to give it a new direction. You stop asking for closure from another person and start giving it to yourself. And then, one quiet morning, you wake up and notice something almost miraculous. They're still there in your memory, but the weight is gone. You don't feel haunted anymore. You just feel whole. The thoughts might visit from time to time, but they no longer hurt. They're not chains. They're footprints. Proof that you walked through something difficult. and came out more conscious, more awake. When you reach this point, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like peace. You stop craving answers because you understand the truth that was waiting for you all along. It was never about forgetting them. It was about remembering yourself. You realize that every person who enters your life leaves something behind, not to burden you, but to build you. And when you start to see your pain that way, it becomes sacred. You no longer see it as something to get rid of, but as something that shaped who you've become. So if you're still in the middle of it, still wrestling with the thoughts, still feeling the ache, don't rush yourself. This is not punishment. It's initiation. You're not losing control. You're learning who you are without the illusion. And when you understand that, you stop running from the pain. You let it move through you. You let it change you, because that's what it came for, to bring you home to yourself. There comes a time when you finally stop waiting for closure, for answers, for that person to fade completely from your mind. One day you realize the silence in your head isn't empty anymore. It's peaceful. It's yours. The person who once lived there, their voice, their face, their gravity, no longer pulls you in. And you understand something so simple yet so profound. You're free. It doesn't happen like a switch flipping. It happens slowly, almost imperceptibly, like winter turning to spring. You start noticing little things, how your mornings no longer begin with thoughts of them, how your heart doesn't tighten when a song plays, how you can revisit a memory without falling into it. The past becomes a landscape, not a prison. And when you look back, it almost feels strange that you ever believed they had that much power. You see now that it wasn't them holding you. It was your attachment to what they represented. They were never the keeper of your peace. You were. You always were. When you reach this stage, you don't need to hate them or even forgive them in some grand, dramatic way. Forgiveness becomes something quieter, not about excusing, but releasing. You see them as human, flawed, and fragile, just like you. You understand that everyone we meet is fighting their own invisible battles, acting out their own unconscious patterns, and somehow that understanding softens everything. You realize how much of your life has been shaped by the stories you've carried about love, rejection, worth, destiny, and now you begin to rewrite them. You stop needing someone else to validate your value. You stop searching for reflection outside, because you've already met the one person you needed to see clearly, yourself. That's the real liberation, isn't it? Not forgetting, but remembering who you were before the wound, or maybe even deeper, discovering who you've become because of it. You've learned to hold your pain without drowning in it, to feel without clinging, to love without losing yourself. That's what freedom feels like. Not absence, but balance. And you start to notice that the world looks different now. Colors seem brighter, conversations deeper. Solitude no longer feels like loneliness, but like home, because you're no longer running from yourself. You're no longer trying to fill the silence. You've made peace with it. You might even smile when you think of them. Not because you want them back, but because you understand what they gave you. Unintentionally, perhaps, but profoundly. They opened a door you didn't know existed. They forced you to meet the parts of yourself you'd hidden away. They were the mirror, and you finally learned to look beyond the reflection. And that's when the cycle truly ends, when you stop asking life to bring them back or erase them, and instead thank the experience for shaping you. You don't need the story to be different. You just need to honor the meaning it brought. You see now what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You've stopped calling it fate. You've started calling it awareness. And with that awareness comes something sacred, a quiet confidence, a soft strength. You no longer need to chase what's gone because you finally know that nothing essential can ever be lost. What was meant to awaken you has done its job. So you let the memory rest. You let them go, not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because now you understand. The person who once felt like your undoing was really your beginning, the end of illusion, the start of truth. And as you breathe in this freedom, this wholeness that's been waiting underneath all along, you feel the final truth settle in your chest, like light after rain. The answer was never in them. It was always in you.